Good morning. It is June 16th, and we get another day to do a Devo, so that's pretty cool. And we are in the book of Revelation, and we're kind of wrapping up chapter 12 in our Devo and kind of get into 13 today. And if you could just remember, we're kind of dealing with these, what's called the woes, right? The three woes that were kind of told to John that would come upon the earth. And seems like with every woe, things just get worse and judgment happens. And when God judges, it's obviously pretty severe. And now it's interesting because in verse 12 of chapter 12, one of these woes is spoken of as the dragon or Satan or the devil coming to the earth. And it says, "Therefore rejoice, you heavens, and you who dwell in them. But woe," there's the woe, right? "To the earth and the sea, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury because he knows that his time is short." Now, we saw the angel, the giant angel, standing on the sea and on the earth. And now we see the dragon coming to the sea and to the earth. The idea is the entire earth is his domain, which makes sense, right? The Bible says that the devil is the prince and power of the air in the book of Ephesians, chapter 2. So woe to the earth and the sea, right? Kind of get the idea of the whole entire planet, because the devil has gone down to you. He is filled with fury and he knows his time is short. Get the idea that it's a short time. Something's going to happen quickly. And it is, in a sense, judgment on the earth, right? The judgment happens where you can, you get what you want. Maybe the earth doesn't want Jesus Christ. Maybe they are going to want someone else, and they'll get that someone else kind of idea. This passage, I have to tell you, really impacted me when I was young, because a band that I listened to had this quoted in one of their albums. And I read this and I was like, wow, what a trip. And the album cover that they had reflected this passage and another passage in that we're going to see too. But anyway, as a young person who did not know the Bible or was not raised in the church culture, this passage really hit me hard and made me even want to think about the Bible and have the idea of maybe even reading it one day. So I'm really grateful for that band to include that in there. And the Word of God, no matter where it's at, it's going to penetrate people's hearts. So it says, "When the dragon saw that he had been hurled down to the earth, he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child. The woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle," the idea of swift flight, right? "So that she might fly into the place prepared for her in the desert, where she would be taken care of for a time, times and a half, 3.5 years, out of the serpent's reach." So we talked about how Israel and Satan just have had this kind of go at, right? Forever, this brawl, and it's just seen throughout the entire Bible, and the book of Revelation is kind of always hitting on this battle. And I just want to reiterate that idea to you this morning, is that, just as it says that she would be taken care of, what a beautiful statement, right? That you will be taken care of by God. I mean, what a beautiful thing to dwell on this morning, is that you're going to be taken care of and you don't have to worry. Now, doesn't that sound a lot like Jesus? Don't worry. And I mean, if you were hanging out with Jesus, there was nothing but worry, right? I mean, let's face it, economic crisis in the country of Israel. You had warlords, a whole empire that took over your land. Already most of your land was merged with all kinds of other people. It was really a relic of what it used to be. And you had a people that were just beat up and probably tired of the amount of Gentile oppression that the Israel people faced. And yet God promises them over and over that, hey, I'm going to put you under my wings. I'm going to take care of you, right? I'm going to just, Jesus said to his people, right, when he looked over Jerusalem, I long to gather you. But just remember that our God is a God who prepares places for us. He has a place for us. Jesus reiterated this over to his disciples as well. I have a place for you. And he has a place for you too. So we don't have to worry because of those promises, because we have a place for us. And it's amazing when you really trust that you have a place for you, then you can endure just about anything. And that's really how we can get through times that we go through today, is we put our faith in those promises that God is able to take care of us. And when you remember those promises that God is, he's able to take care of us. He has a place prepared for us. He has a future for us, a future and a hope for you. When you're locked into that, and you think of this passage too, that you will be taken care of, we're rock solid in that, then we'll be able to endure. It's not that things are going to get are easy. It's not that we just go through them and go, oh, this is a piece of cake. No, there's trials and there's fears and there's letdowns and there's just so much difficulty, right, in our hearts and in our minds. But knowing that God's got a place for us, that's everything. And that's the beautiful thing. Now notice it says that God has a place for the woman, right, who bore the child, the Messiah, Israel. And it says, then from his mouth the serpent spewed water like a river to overtake the woman and sweep her away with a torment. I get the idea, whenever I think of a river or water like a river, I think of things like the Red Sea or the Jordan, or, I think of, the Nile. I think of that. I think of the Sea of Galilee. I see just a bunch of pictures in my head of biblical passages, and I always think of, sometimes they represent judgment, right? Sometimes they represent tranquility. We'll see in the book of Revelation, the river that flows and it waters things and it's beautiful, right? And here we get the idea that this water is definitely like a warring river, right? To sweep her away with the torrent, right? Horrible storm. So there's constant battling, constant warring, constant wanting to draw Israel away, right, from God. It says, but the earth helped the woman by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that the dragon had spewed out of his mouth. Wow, how cool is that, right? Kind of an interesting picture, right, of the earth opening up its mouth and swallowing the river, a place, right, that's provided, a place of defense, right? A place to defend from this crazy, powerful river warring against Israel. There's going to be a place of safety for Israel. And just as there is for the church, there is a place of safety for Israel as well. And it says, then the dragon was enraged at the woman and went off to make war against the rest of her offspring, those who obey God's commandments and hold to the testimony. And we've seen that in the book of Revelation, that the book of Revelation predominantly is about a short period of time of God dealing with the earth and the final Gentile rulership of over Israel that will commence. And Jerusalem will be this cup of trembling we saw. And we see that the people that are not Jewish people, from every tribe, nation, tongue, language, everything like that, there's going to be a persecution on people that give their life to Jesus Christ during this time. And they keep asking, hey, when is it that you're going to judge? When is justice finally going to happen? And remember, there was a trumpet that was blown, and it was like, now it's going to happen. There's going to be no more delay, and God's judgment is happening. And we're seeing this unfolding of God's judgment. And just to let you know, and I think another cool thing we could wrap up with in the devotion is that, no matter how bad things get, and they will get bad as it's talking about, because it says the beast is going to, or the dragon's going to make war against the offspring of the woman, we always have to remember that God's justice is thorough, and God is the greatest judge. And that's how we can forgive, and that's how we can look at people, even when Jesus is on the cross, and say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So even though people suppress the truth in unrighteousness, and my son always tells me that, is that people know, but they just push it down. And even though, that's what people do, is they know the truth, it's in their heart. They can't get away from objective truth. They can't get away from being in this box of right and wrong. And we have a God consciousness and a God awareness and a God understanding of accountability, and that we need to do the right things and strive to the right things. We suppress those truths down. But Jesus also gave us an idea that people, even though they're doing that, they just don't realize what they're doing. They don't have a full understanding. But we of all people who, the blessing of reading the book of Revelation that it gives us, and it says you're blessed if you read it, is that, man, we get to see God's justice in action. And when you see swift judgment, you don't have to judge. And that's the cool part. When you see a judge really judge righteously and deal with things in a right way, you don't have to judge. And even though we see that the dragon here is going to go after people, right, who obey God's commands and hold to the testimony of Jesus, we can be rest assured that the judgment that we see in the book of Revelation that will be coming, part of that judgment is the beast that's going to rise out of the sea, and the beast that's going to come out of the earth, the Antichrist and the false prophet. And those systems and those governments, those empires, if you will, those things that come out are all going to be a part of these judgments. And man, God is super precise. Precision is, man, he cuts perfectly. And, I don't. So we can just give God that judgment, and then, we can find some forgiveness ourselves. We can find ways for us to look at people in really cool ways and good ways. So if you find yourself getting a little frustrated in the world, just remember, hey, there's a judge, and, stay in the book of Revelation, and you'll realize that, okay? So tomorrow, Lord willing, we're going to be in the beast out of the sea. The dragon has come to the earth. Woe to the earth and to the sea, for the devil has come down to you, right? And he knows his time is short. So now we're going to see the devil's conflict with Israel in this short period of time, these 3.5 years coming up, and what's going to be happening on the earth. The Antichrist, the false prophet, and the systems that it brings. And so think of Israel, think of the land of Israel, think of all the nations that are around it, all the Middle East, and those people surrounding Israel, and Israel, especially Jerusalem, being that cup of trembling to all the nations, the center point, So anyway, we'll talk to you guys later, okay? Have a great day. Bye-bye.